Welcomed to the Korean National Assembly as the quote-unquote leader of the world. President Trump delivering a stirring speech to Korean lawmakers just a short time ago. President Trump called on the world to show strength and resolve in the effort to achieve a denuclearized North Korea. Now, as Air Force One gets ready to lift off from Beijing, to Beijing from Seoul, the president is headed for a new round of diplomacy directed at containing Pyongyang, as well as reworking some trade deals. Chinese officials billing the next stop of the president's 12-day trip through Asia as a state visit plus. So how is the so-called Donald diplomacy working out? Let's ask Senator Cory Gardner, a Republican from the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Good to see you tonight.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming in. Okay, so we had Congressman Garamendi, obviously from the other side of the aisle, other side of the hill from you, last night. And here is what he said about how he thinks the president's rhetoric is working or not working with regard to North Korea.
It is very, very dangerous. Not just his rhetoric, but Kim Jong-un's rhetoric. These two folks are not much different than a bunch of kids on the schoolyard cursing each other. The result is usually getting a fight, and we do not want to fight on the Korean Peninsula.
What do you make of his assessment? Because the president says, listen, what we've been doing for the past 25, 30 years hasn't worked. This is my new take on it.
I think what you saw tonight before the National Assembly, the president's speech clearly said he doesn't want a fight. He's prepared for it. We have to prepare for it. But we have to make sure that we do everything we can to peacefully denuclearize, and that's using our diplomatic measures and economic pressure that we can put to bear on them. And so I think you saw a very powerful message by the president, a very clear message, a clear message to South Korea that we stand with our ally, and a clear message to Kim Jong-un that you better denuclearize.
Okay, so we know he's going to be heading to Beijing next. He's talked repeatedly. The world knows that China is a key to dealing with this issue. They've actually signed on to the last couple of rounds of sanctions. Some people argue they were so watered down. That's how you got China and Russia's vote. But what do you think the conversations will be like with China? Do we have levers to put the pressure on them? Do they have to see their own self-interest in this in order to get tougher with North Korea?
You know, the last 8 years, we were following a doctrine of strategic patience with North Korea. That led to numerous detonations of nuclear bombs. That led to the testing of nuclear weapons. That led to the advancement of a ballistic missile program in North Korea. But what we didn't see during the last 8 years was strength and resolve from China. President Trump has actually been able to get China to do more than they have ever done in the past, and we should be grateful that China has done that. But China has to do more, and there is far more that they can and should be doing when it comes to North Korea. And so we need to ramp up that maximum pressure, turn up the dials of economic and diplomatic pressure on them. What I hope President Trump says to President Xi is, if you want to be a responsible world power, if you want to be accepted as a global power, then you have to deal with a neighbor who is threatening not just the region but the world with nuclear war. It's unacceptable for China, that's responsible for 90% of trade with North Korea, to sit back and do the very minimal possible in order to deal with North Korea. They need to be doing more. The president needs to make that clear. And just as the case was with Iran, when the United States started leveling secondary sanctions on China because they weren't enforcing sanctions against Iran, China changed their behavior and started engaging in a productive way with Iran. We should expect the same thing with North Korea. We start leveling secondary sanctions, we start becoming firm in our resolve against Chinese enabling of North Korea, and then we'll start seeing some, I believe, different behaviors toward North Korea.
Well, the president's also talked about how we need Russia, and he needs Putin in this. That's a complicated conversation to have.
It is complicated, but I don't think Russia's interested in a rogue regime in North Korea with a nuclear weapon. China's certainly not interested in that, nor should they be. That's where this alliance between South Korea and Japan and the United States really comes to play. This trilateral alliance that the president spoke about in Japan, that he spoke about before the National Assembly in Korea tonight. This alliance that can really be used to put pressure on Russia, put pressure on China to make a difference.
While we've got you here, let me ask you about a domestic issue as well. How do you feel about what's going to happen with tax reform? We know the Senate's getting ready to roll out its own version while the House's is being hotly debated at this moment.
I'm confident that we'll get tax relief passed, not only out of the House, but the Senate and onto the president's desk, hopefully by mid-December.
A lot of objections, though, by your GOP colleagues on both sides of the House and the Senate. I mean, a lot of them saying they have real problems and they can't vote for what they've seen so far.
Well, but this is a work in progress. I think you're going to see the amendment process work out in the House. You're going to see that same work out in the Senate as we look toward amendments look toward debate, try to understand what it means to our states. But the bottom line is this. The American people haven't seen real wage increases, real salary increases for the past several years. They're working harder than ever. They feel like they're falling further and further behind. And what we know this tax package can do is to increase, as the Council of Economic Advisors, the president has said, increase average household wages by $4,000 as up to $9,000. We know that this will drive economic growth, create real-time GDP growth. This is a chance for the American people to succeed and not just see Wall Street succeed, but to see Main Streets across this country grow economically and result in better opportunities for them.
Well, we know you're not going to get the Democrats to vote. Maybe you may. There's a chance you might get a couple
over in the Senate.
I think we'll pass it
with bipartisan support, but we're going to have to get the support for it first to make that happen.
Right. The party's got to stick together if that's
right.
going to happen. All right. Senator, thanks for coming in tonight.
Thank you.
Good.